The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, a cruel wasteland of burning sand and merciless sun. For 4 days, 8-year-old Rosie had been trudging through the blistering heat, carrying her 5-year-old brother Tommy, whenever his tiny legs could no longer keep up. Their lips were cracked and bleeding, their skin burned red from the relentless sun. The last precious drops of water had vanished yesterday, and the empty bottle lay abandoned in the sand. Their stomachs grumbled and ached, but it was the thirst that gnawed the most, clawing at their insides like sharp knives. Rosie collapsed to her knees beside a jagged rock, lowering Tommy gently onto the warm, unforgiving ground. His small chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Her heart ached. She had promised their mama she would protect him, yet here he was, so weak, so fragile, and she felt powerless. The memory of that day, 4 days ago, replayed itself over and over. The wagon while plunging into a deep hole, the deafening crash, the still forms of Mama and Papa. Rosie and Tommy had crawled from the wreckage, their tiny bodies scraped and bruised, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and one precious canteen of water. "Tommy, please don't die," she whispered, her voice hoarse and fragile as sandpaper. She brushed the sandy hair from his forehead with trembling fingers. "I promised, Mama, I'd keep you safe. I promised." Tears mixed with dirt on her cheeks as she watched him, unsure if he was still alive. The sun blazed overhead, a furnace of heat that seared their skin and drained what little strength Rosie had left. She had scoured the desert for signs of life, following the tracks of animals, searching for shade, rationing their water drop by drop. But it hadn't been enough. Nothing had been enough in this endless, scorching hell. Just as despair threatened to swallow her entirely, a shadow fell across them. Rosie squinted, shielding her eyes, and her heart skipped. A man on horseback appeared, tall and solid against the shimmering horizon. The brim of his cowboy hat cast his face in shadow, but even so, he radiated calm authority. For a heartbeat, she wondered if it was a mirage conjured by her dehydrated mind. "Come with me, children," the cowboy said, his voice low, deep but gentle. A spike of fear shot through her exhausted body. Mama had always warned her never to trust strangers, especially men she didn't know. But looking down at Tommy's pale, unresponsive face, her courage crumbled. He was dying. His lips were tinged blue, and his eyes hadn't fluttered open in hours. The cowboy dismounted slowly, careful not to startle them. "My name is Jake," he said, kneeling a few feet away. "I'm not going to hurt you, but your brother needs help, and I can give it to him." Rosie tried to shield Tommy, but her body refused to obey. She was too weak, too scared, too depleted. "Mama said never trust strangers," she croaked, her voice trembling. Jake nodded, understanding her fear. "Your mama was right to teach you that. But right now, I'm not a stranger asking you to trust me. I'm someone who can save your brother's life." He reached slowly into his saddlebag and produced a canteen. "He needs water, and he needs it now." Just then, Tommy stopped breathing. For a moment that stretched like eternity, Rosie's world tilted. "Tommy!" she screamed, shaking him desperately. "Tommy, please." Jake moved quickly, but gently, lifting Tommy's head and carefully dripping water onto his parched lips. "Come on, son. Come back to us." After agonizing seconds, Tommy coughed, sputtered, and blinked weakly, a fleeting flicker of life returning to his small eyes before they closed again. Rosie's defenses shattered completely. She had tried to be brave, the big sister mama needed her to be. But she was just a little girl, and she was failing the most important job of her life. "I can't save him," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "I can't keep my promise to Mama. Please just save Tommy. I don't care what happens to me. Just please save him." Jake's expression softened, full of quiet compassion. He lifted Tommy carefully into his strong arms. The little boy was light as a feather, so fragile Rosie could hardly believe he had survived the desert. I'm going to save both of you, Jake said firmly. Can you climb onto my horse, sweetheart? With his help, Rosie managed to hoist herself onto the horse. Jake settled Tommy in front of her so she could cradle him, feel the rise and fall of his chest. As the horse began to move, the rhythmic sway and gentle clop of hooves lulled some of her panic away. For the first time in days, Rosie felt a tiny spark of hope. The landscape gradually softened, the harsh desert yielding to rolling hills dotted with patches of green. Trees appeared like oases in the distance, and then, beyond the hills, smoke curled upward from the chimney of a log cabin. It looked like something out of a dream, almost too perfect to exist. "Are you taking us home?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain, trembling with a mixture of relief and fear. Jake was quiet for a long moment, as though choosing his words carefully. "Home is where people love you, little one," he said, his voice carrying a mysterious warmth that made Rosie's chest swell with longing. As they crested the final hill, the ranch lay spread below them in all its serene beauty. A sturdy log cabin with wide porches, green pastures dotted with grazing animals, and a woman in a blue dress standing on the porch, arms outstretched as if waiting for them. Rosie's heart pounded. Could they really trust these strangers? Could they allow themselves to hope again? And yet, as the horse carried them closer to this place that seemed almost magical, Rosie dared to believe. Maybe, just maybe, they were about to find the family and the safety they had thought lost forever. The ranch looked like something out of fairy tale. After 4 days wandering in the burning desert, Rosie could hardly believe her eyes. Rolling green fields stretched out as far as she could see, dotted with tall, leafy trees that offered cool, shaded relief from the relentless sun. A gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of wildflowers and the earthy tang of fresh grass. Her chest tightened, and tears blurred her vision. She had never imagined such a place existed. As Jake's horse drew closer to the log cabin, a smell drifted through the air, warm, comforting, inviting. Bread, perhaps, or a pot of simmering soup. Rosie's empty stomach twisted painfully. "It's like heaven, Tommy," she whispered, holding her unconscious brother tighter against her chest. His small form felt fragile, but at least he was still breathing. A woman in a soft blue dress came running from the porch, her expression a mixture of concern and gentle kindness. Her warm brown eyes and delicate hands reached immediately for Tommy. "Oh my goodness," she breathed, voice soft and musical. "Jake, these poor babies." "This is my wife, Julie," Jake said as he dismounted, helping Rosie down from the horse. "Julie, this is Rosie and her brother Tommy. I found them in the desert." Julie's gaze quickly shifted to Tommy. Her fingers moved with calm efficiency, checking his pulse, brushing hair from his damp forehead, and listening to his breathing with practiced skill. "Bring him inside, quickly. Rosie, honey, can you walk?" When Rosie nodded, Julie smiled, warmth radiating from her. "Good girl. You've been so brave, taking care of your brother." Inside the cabin, everything was clean, orderly, and beautiful. Colorful quilts covered the furniture, and rows of books lined the shelves. The smell of home-cooked food filled the air, wrapping around Rosie like a protective blanket. Julie laid Tommy gently on a soft couch and began wiping his face with a damp cloth while Jake fetched clean towels and water. "Why are you being so nice to us?" Rosie asked, her voice trembling. She had learned not to trust kindness too easily. Adults often said gentle words, but meant little. Julie looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Because every child deserves to be safe, sweetheart. Every child deserves to be loved and cared for." She dabbed at a small cut on Tommy's forehead. "Now, when did you two last eat?" Rosie thought hard. "Maybe yesterday. We found some berries, but they made Tommy sick." Julie nodded, and within minutes, warm soup and fresh bread appeared before Rosie, along with a glass of milk that tasted sweeter than anything she had ever known. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, and watched Julie work on Tommy. The color returned to his cheeks, and a weak smile broke across his face when she tickled his chin lightly. After they were both cleaned up and fed, Julie led them upstairs to a beautiful room with 2 small beds. But Rosie froze. Everything was covered with white sheets, and a layer of dust lay thick on the windowsill. Toys sat in the corner, forgotten, and a child's painting hung crookedly on the wall. A stick-figure family with Michael scrawled beneath it in childish letters. "Whose room is this?" Rosie asked softly, her voice trembling. Julie's face clouded with sorrow, and she sank onto one of the beds. "This was our son Michael's room," she said, voice breaking. "He died last winter from a fever. This room has been waiting for laughter again." Rosie understood loss. She knew the ache of losing someone you loved. She took Julie's hand gently. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Over the next few days, something miraculous happened. Tommy regained his strength, laughter returning to his small, freckled face. Julie taught the children simple chores, feeding the chickens, gathering eggs, sweeping the porch. Jake showed them the baby animals, tiny calves and fluffy chicks that made Tommy squeal with delight. At night, Julie braided Rosie's long hair and sang soft lullabies their mother had once sung. During the day, Jake patiently explained the workings of the ranch, how to check the fences, identify animal tracks, and care for the horses. Slowly, Rosie allowed herself to feel safe, to feel that this could truly be a home. One evening, as Julie tucked them into bed, Rosie's heart betrayed her. "Mama Julie," she whispered, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Julie's eyes filled with tears, this time of happiness. She kissed Rosie's forehead softly. "Sweet dreams, my darling girl," she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. Later that night, Rosie heard Julie and Jake talking quietly downstairs. "They're healing our hearts too, aren't they?" Julie asked softly. "They sure are," Jake replied. "It's like this house has come alive again." But the fragile peace was short-lived. The next day, Jake returned from town, his face dark and uneasy. He held a telegram in his hands, shaking slightly. When Julie asked what was wrong, he merely shook his head. "It's nothing," he said, but Rosie had learned to read grown-up expressions. That night, as she lay in Michael's bed, she overheard Jake speaking to himself in the barn. "I won't let anyone take them away." Her blood ran cold. Take them away? Who would want to take them from this sanctuary, from Julie and Jake who loved them, from the safety they had only just begun to feel? Rosie hugged the quilt tightly to her chest, staring at the ceiling, a single thought repeating itself over and over. What if our happiness is about to end? 3 months had passed since that terrible day in the desert, and Rosie could hardly believe how much their lives had changed. Every morning now began with sunlight pouring through clean windows, the golden beams lighting up the soft quilts on their beds. The smell of Julie's pancakes drifted up from the kitchen, mingling with the faint scent of fresh laundry. It was a smell that had come to feel like safety, like home. Tommy had grown taller and stronger, his cheeks plump and rosy from good food and the crisp air of the countryside. The terrified, starving children they had once been seemed like shadows of a nightmare, something distant and unreal. Rosie had found her place in this new family. She loved helping Julie with breakfast, standing on a wooden stool to reach the stove, carefully flipping pancakes just the way Jake liked them, or sprinkling sugar and cinnamon over the boys' porridge. She had learned how to gather eggs from the henhouse without getting pecked, and she took quiet pride in helping Julie hang laundry on the line, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin as she worked. It felt good, really good, to be useful, to feel needed, to know that she belonged. Tommy shadowed Jake everywhere, small hand tucked safely in his father's calloused one. "Papa Jake, can I help?" had become his favorite phrase, asked at all hours, often with an eager bounce in his step. Jake patiently taught him to milk the gentler cows, showed him how to brush the horses without startling them, and let him scatter feed for the chickens. Evenings became treasured moments when Tommy would curl up in Jake's lap by the fire, falling asleep to the gentle sound of his father's voice reading stories of far-off lands, brave heroes, and children who found new families of their own. One evening, Rosie was helping Julie prepare supper when she overheard her parents speaking quietly in the next room. She knew she shouldn't listen, but the sound of her own name drew her closer. "We should make this official," Julie's voice said, warm and certain. "Adopt them properly. They belong with us, Jake." Jake's tone was cautious. What if their family is still looking for them? "Look at them, Jake. Look how happy they are. Look how they've grown and changed. This is their family now." Rosie felt her heart leap. They wanted to adopt them? They wanted to keep them forever? The thought made tears spring to her eyes. "Do you really want to keep us forever?" she whispered, stepping into the room, voice trembling. Julie dropped her dish towel and swept Rosie into her arms. "Forever and always, my darling girl, if you want us to." That night, as Rosie and Tommy got ready for bed, she knelt beside his small cot. "Do you want to stay here with Mama Julie and Papa Jake?" she asked softly, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. Tommy's face scrunched up in thought. But what about our real Mama and Papa? Rosie felt a familiar pang of longing. She still missed them terribly, still dreamed of them sometimes. But in these 3 months, she had learned something vital. Sometimes love could create a family, even when the past was gone. "They would want us to be happy and safe," she said quietly. "They would want us to be loved." Tommy nodded, a serious expression crossing his small face. "I love Papa Jake, and Mama Julie makes the best cookies." The next morning, at breakfast, the children made their request together. "Can we be your real children now?" Rosie asked, voice small but steady. "Can we stay forever?" Julie burst into happy tears, and Jake cleared his throat several times before he could speak. "Nothing would make us happier," he said at last, his voice thick with emotion. Within the week, Jake had visited the lawyer in town to begin the adoption papers. There would be forms to fill out, visits from officials, and a waiting period. But the lawyer assured them that since no family had come forward in 3 months, and the children clearly wanted to stay, everything should go smoothly. The town watched the Harrison family grow together. Mrs. Patterson at the general store always saved the best apples for Tommy. Mr. Jenkins at the bank asked Rosie about her school lessons every time Jake brought her to town. Even the sheriff, a gruff man who usually scared children, tipped his hat to them and asked how his young ones were doing. Life felt perfect. On Sundays, they attended the little white church together, sitting in the third pew where Jake's family had always sat. Julie taught Rosie to bake apple pie, while Jake showed Tommy how to ride and guide a pony safely. Evenings were a quiet joy. The family gathered around the table for supper, sharing the day's adventures and making plans for the next. One particularly beautiful evening, they had a picnic by the stream that ran through the property. Tommy chased fireflies, laughter ringing out over the water, while Rosie and Julie picked wildflowers in the tall grass. Jake leaned against a tree, watching them with a peaceful smile. This was everything he had ever wanted, a home filled with love, children's voices echoing in rooms that had once been too quiet. At bedtime, their prayers had changed, too. Instead of asking God to guide them home, they thanked Him for the family they had found. "Thank you, God, for bringing us our children," Julie whispered, kissing their foreheads. But late one afternoon, as Rosie hung laundry on the line, a flicker of worry crossed her mind. In the distance, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon, riders approaching fast. Jake saw it too. His face went pale, and he quickly ushered Julie and the children inside. "Stay in the house," he said, voice tight with concern. "No matter what happens, stay inside." Through the window, Rosie watched 3 men ride up to the front gate, their horses kicking up clouds of dust. Jake's shoulders tensed, and she felt her heart sink. Their perfect world, built over these months, was about to be tested, and she didn't know if it would survive. The lead writer was a tall, stern man with cold gray eyes and a cruel mouth. He dismounted with sharp, angry movements that made the horses nervous. Behind him, two rough-looking men stayed on their horses, hands resting near their guns. "I've come for my brother's children," the man announced loudly. "I'm Marcus Williamson, and those orphans belong with me." Rosie's blood turned to ice. She grabbed Tommy's hand and pulled him away from the window. This was their uncle, their father's brother. She remembered him now from when she was very small. He had always been mean, always shouting at their papa about money and land. Jake stepped out onto the porch, his jaw set firm. "Those children are happy here. They're safe and loved." Marcus laughed, a harsh sound with no warmth. "I don't care about your sentiment, cowboy. I'm her closest blood relative, and I have legal papers." He waved the document in the air. "They're coming with me today. This is our home." Rosie burst out, running onto the porch despite Julie's protests. "These are our parents now. We don't want to go with you." Marcus looked down at her with disgust. "Children don't get to choose, girl. Pack your things. We're leaving in an hour." Tommy started crying, clinging to Julie's skirt. "I don't want to go. I want to stay with Mama Julie and Papa Jake." "Blood is thicker than water," Marcus said coldly. "And blood is thicker than the feelings of some childless couple playing house." Julie stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "We've cared for them for 3 months. They've been through terrible trauma, and they're finally healing. You can't just tear them away from everything they know." "Watch me," Marcus sneered. The sheriff arrived within the hour, summoned by a neighbor who had seen the commotion. Sheriff Williams was a fair man who had known Jake and Julie for years. He looked uncomfortable as he examined Marcus's papers. "Everything appears to be in order," he said reluctantly. "He is their legal guardian as next of kin." "But Sheriff," Jake pleaded, "look at these children. They're terrified of him." Tommy had stopped eating and wouldn't come out from behind Julie. He kept having nightmares, crying for Mama Julie in his sleep. Rosie stayed fierce and protective, but the fear in her eyes broke Julie's heart. "I won't let him take Tommy away from Mama Julie," Rosie declared, standing guard over her little brother like a tiny soldier. That evening, while Marcus and his men camped outside town, Rosie overheard something that made her sick with fear. Marcus was talking to his men by their campfire, not knowing she was hiding nearby. "Those brats inherit their parents' land claims," Marcus was saying. "Prime property near the river. Once I get legal custody, I can sell it all and we'll be rich." "What about the kids?" one man asked. Marcus shrugged. "Once the papers are signed and the land is sold, they're not my problem anymore. I'll dump them at the first orphanage we find." Rosie ran back to the house, her heart pounding. She found Tommy curled up in Julie's lap, both of them crying. "We have to run away before he takes us," Rosie whispered desperately. Julie's heart broke even more. "Don't leave us, please. We'll find another way." Jake knelt down beside them, his voice firm with determination. "I promise you both, I won't let anyone separate this family. We'll fight this in court if we have to." But Marcus wasn't finished. The next morning, he came back with more official papers and a court order. "Hearing is set for tomorrow," he announced with a cruel smile. "Judge will decide once and for all who these children belong to." As he rode away, he called back over his shoulder. "Pack their things, Harrison. Tomorrow night, they'll be sleeping under my roof." That night, the Harrison family held each other close, afraid it might be their last night together. Tommy fell asleep between Julie and Jake, exhausted from crying. Rosie lay awake, staring at the ceiling, making plans. If the judge said they had to go with Uncle Marcus, she would grab Tommy and run. She would keep running until they found somewhere safe. She couldn't let Uncle Marcus hurt Tommy. She wouldn't break her promise to Mama. Not again. Outside, the wind howled like it was crying too, and morning felt like the end of the world. The courthouse was packed to overflowing, the air thick with anticipation and the faint scent of polished wood and old papers. Word had spread across the town about the Harrison family's struggle, and it seemed everyone had come to show support. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row, her hands clutching a handkerchief so tightly her knuckles were white. Mr. Jenkins had closed his bank early just to be there, his tie loosened and brow furrowed with worry. Even Doc Murphy, usually a man of solitude who rarely left his office, sat with arms crossed, glaring at Marcus with quiet fury. Marcus sat confidently at one table with a slick lawyer from the city, leaning back in his chair, fingers tapping rhythmically on the polished wood. His expression was smug, almost arrogant, as though the court was merely a formality he would easily win. On the opposite side, Jake and Julie sat together, holding hands tightly. Their faces were taut with anxiety, but their eyes never left Rosie and Tommy, who clung to them nervously, pale and trembling with fear. Judge Harrison, no relation to Jake despite the shared surname, was a gray-haired man known for fairness but strict adherence to the law. His spectacles rested low on his nose as he reviewed the mountain of papers spread before him, lips pursed in concentration. Marcus's lawyer spoke first, smooth and commanding. "Your Honor, the law is clear. Mr. Marcus Williamson is the closest living blood relative of these children. He has every legal right to custody, and the court must honor that right, regardless of sentiment or emotion. These children belong with their family," Marcus added, his tone practiced, attempting to sound compassionate. "It is what my dear brother would have wanted." When it was Jake and Julie's lawyer's turn, the atmosphere shifted immediately. Mr. Thompson, steady and confident, called witness after witness to illustrate the love and care the Harrisons had given Rosie and Tommy. First was Mrs. Anderson, the children's schoolteacher, who spoke with quiet conviction. "Your Honor, when Rosie and Tommy first came to school, they were terrified, quiet, withdrawn. Now, they laugh and play with their classmates, participate in lessons eagerly, and show remarkable kindness to others. Rosie helps her friends with reading, and Tommy has befriended every child in his class. These children have thrived under the Harrisons' care." Next, Doc Murphy, gruff but sincere, stood, adjusting his spectacles. "I examined these children when Jake first brought them to town. They were near death from starvation and exposure. Under the Harrisons' care, they've grown strong and healthy. But more than that, they've healed emotionally. That requires love, not just duty." One by one, neighbors came forward. Mrs. Patterson described the children playing in her orchard, laughing and running in the sunshine. Mr. Jenkins spoke of Rosie helping him count coins during a school fundraiser, her face full of pride. Even the sheriff, usually stern and intimidating, testified about how the children were happy, well-behaved, and clearly loved. Then came the moment that everyone had been waiting for, the children's testimony. Tommy went first, voice quivering, barely above a whisper. "I don't want to leave my real family. Papa Jake saved us in the desert. Mama Julie makes me feel safe. Uncle Marcus scares me." All eyes turned to Rosie. She stood slowly, her small hands trembling, heart pounding, but her voice rang clear. "Your Honor, Papa Jake saved our lives. Mama Julie healed our hearts. They didn't have to love us, but they do. They sing us lullabies, help us with our homework, and teach us right from wrong." She paused, swallowing hard, then continued, voice stronger. "Uncle Marcus doesn't want us because he loves us. He wants our mom and papa's land so he can sell it and get rich. I heard him talking to his men. He said once he gets the land, he'll put us in an orphanage." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, voices rising in shock and anger. Marcus's face turned beet red, and he attempted to stand, but his lawyer quickly pressed a hand on his arm to keep him seated. "That's a lie," Marcus shouted. "She's just a child making things up." But Judge Harrison's gaze was sharp and unwavering. He had watched Marcus closely and had seen the flash of guilt cross his face. "Mr. Williamson," he said sternly, "is it true these children stand to inherit valuable property from their parents?" Marcus's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear, but the damage was done. The courtroom had seen the reaction, and the truth hung heavily in the air. Julie took the stand last, tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice trembling but full of resolve. Your Honor, these children are our life, our healing, our hope. We lost our son Michael last year, and our hearts were broken. But Rosie and Tommy brought joy back into our home. We don't want to replace their parents. We just want to love them and keep them safe. Jake spoke after her, voice rough with emotion, each word deliberate and heavy. I'll protect them with my life, Your Honor. They're my children now, and I won't let anyone hurt them. The judge called for a recess to deliberate. For 30 excruciating minutes, the Harrisons sat together, hands entwined, hearts pounding. Tommy had dozed off in Julie's lap, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Rosie sat rigid, eyes fixed on the empty bench, whispering prayers under her breath, willing this day to end with justice. Finally, Judge Harrison returned, the weight of his presence commanding silence. Every head turned, every breath held. The courtroom was so still it seemed the walls themselves were listening. I've made my decision, he announced, voice steady and powerful, echoing off the high ceilings, reverberating through every heart in the room. Judge Harrison looked directly at the children before he spoke. In all my years on this bench, I have learned that the law must serve the best interests of the children, not just the legal precedent. He paused, and Rosie felt her heart stop beating. Custody of Rosie and Tommy Williamson is hereby awarded to Jake and Julie Harrison. The courtroom exploded in cheers and applause. Tommy woke up confused, but when he saw everyone smiling and crying happy tears, he started clapping too. Rosie burst into sobs of relief, throwing her arms around Julie's neck. We get to stay, Tommy shouted. We're really your children now. Marcus jumped to his feet, his face purple with rage. This isn't over, he screamed, pointing at the judge. I'll appeal this decision. Those children and their inheritance belong to me. But nobody was listening to him anymore. The whole town was surrounding the Harrison family, offering congratulations and hugs. Sheriff Williams escorted Marcus and his men out of the courthouse while they were still shouting threats. 2 weeks later, the adoption ceremony took place at the little white church where the Harrisons had been attending services. The same people who had supported them in court now filled the pews to witness something beautiful. The official creation of family bound by love, not just law. Rosie wore a new blue dress that Julie had sewn for her, and Tommy had on his first real suit. When the pastor asked if they wanted to take the Harrison name, both children answered with loud, happy yes. I now pronounce you officially and forever the Harrison family, the pastor declared. Julie couldn't stop crying tears of joy. Our family is complete, she whispered, holding both children close. Jake's voice was thick with emotion as he made his promise. I vow to be the father you deserve, to love you and protect you for the rest of my life. But Marcus wasn't finished causing trouble. 3 days after the adoption ceremony, he came back to the ranch with hired men, planning to kidnap the children and take them by force. Rosie saw them coming first. She was feeding chickens when she spotted the dust cloud on the horizon, the same sight that had terrified her months ago. But this time, she wasn't afraid. This was her home, and these were her parents. Papa Jake, she shouted, running toward the house. Uncle Marcus is coming back. Jake grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch, his face grim and determined. Julie, take the children inside and lock the doors. But Rosie surprised everyone. Instead of hiding, she ran to the church bell that Jake had installed to call the family in for meals. She began ringing it as hard as she could, the signal they had arranged with their neighbors in case of trouble. Within minutes, half the town was riding toward the Harrison ranch. Mr. Jenkins came with a shotgun. Doc Murphy arrived in his buggy. Even Mrs. Patterson came, carrying her late husband's hunting rifle. When Marcus saw the crowd of armed townspeople surrounding the ranch, his confidence crumbled. The sheriff arrived just as Marcus was trying to retreat. Marcus Williamson, Sheriff Williams announced, you're under arrest for attempted kidnapping and making threats. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, his property schemes were finally exposed. The townspeople learned he had been trying to steal land from several families, using forged documents and legal tricks. The children's inheritance was safe, and Marcus would be spending a long time in prison. 1 year later, the Harrison family had grown in an unexpected way. Julie was expecting a baby, a biological sibling for Rosie and Tommy. But the children weren't worried about being replaced. They knew now what real love meant. Rosie had become a confident leader at school, helping new students feel welcome. Tommy had grown tall and strong, learning everything Jake could teach him about running a ranch. At dinner one evening, as they sat around their table that would soon need a fifth chair, Tommy asked the question that had been on his mind. Will you love the new baby more than us because it's really yours? Jake and Julie exchanged a smile. You are really ours, Julie said gently. Love doesn't come from blood. It comes from choosing to care for someone every single day. That night, as Jake tucked them into bed, he looked around at their home, filled with laughter, love, and the promise of tomorrow. Love makes a family, he said quietly, not blood. In the distance, the desert stretched endlessly under the stars. But inside the Harrison house, 4 hearts beat as one, safe and loved forever.